Good evening and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm your host, Kevin Castley. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Tonight we're joined with Grayson here. We might also be joined by some other Hawks as well. I know that Pest had indicated some interest in coming on for the panel tonight. We're going to be discussing Vladimir Putin, future Putin's. Okay, yeah, we are getting a little bit of feedback on Grayson's end, but we're going to be discussing future Putin's buildup of and transportation of military equipment, armored personnel carriers, etc., to Ukraine, to occupied Ukraine, and it's a potential gearing up for either a furtherance of the invasion or heightened tensions in the ongoing war. Now he already has de facto control over Crimea, de facto control over the Luhansk region, de facto control over Donetsk. Now, we're going to take a look at a video here. This was uploaded on Twitter about an hour ago. And yeah, actually, Anthony's saying he's interested in coming on. There's a video let me just go back to that. Just want to get the source first so I can credit them. This is Mete Sodo Glue. I'm not pronouncing that properly. I believe it's a Turkish name. He's got a 30-second video of Russian military material heading into occupied territory to bolster Putin's positions against the Ukrainian army. So we're going to take a look at this, and it's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty ridiculous. The U.S. is expressing a concern over this, so I'm going to take a look here. Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't realize it had music attached to it. Not sure if that's copyrighted or not, so we're going to mute that. So that train that you're seeing there is en route from, the actual proper Russian territory into occupied territory that's under control by Russian forces. Now, we're going to take a look at an article here. This was published today, a few hours ago, in Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and it's expressing American concern over the recent buildup of forces. Okay, we have Pest joining us right now. We're just going to take a look at this article. So, again, this is Radio Free Europe. So, U.S. concerned over reported Russian troop movements amid heightened tensions in eastern Ukraine. Yep. So the United States expressing concern. So expressing concern is a big meme. We're all familiar with the meme. Yeah, Pest is just having technical issues in connecting right now, so hopefully he'll be able to make it in shortly. Amid reports of a buildup of Russian troops along Ukraine's border and in Crimea, Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke by phone with his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba, and U.S. General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We got Warkettle joining tonight. Okay, we got Jay joining us as well.
What the hell, Kevin? You're having a live stream about my people, and you don't even have any one of my people representing my people. This is racism.
Wait, is your people Ukraine?
Oh, I thought you were still talking about the Anglos.
Oh, no. The Anglos is for tomorrow's video and the next day, too. I've got a couple videos on the Anglo box coming out. Tonight, we're talking about...
Today.
No, well, I guess it's today where you are, because you're like 9 hours ahead or whatever, but...
Well, yeah, that is true. By the way, it is April 1st, so, you know...
Yeah, where you are, that's true. It's 11:37 on the left coast of Canada right now, so...
Fair enough. Well, I haven't got much time, so I just want to say one thing, Kevin.
Yeah.
I crossed the green line on Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Hello?
Can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, hello, Anthony Roberto.
All right, so you want to talk about Ukraine? because I have a lot of stuff though from the International Institute of Strategic Studies. I different stuff on the Ukrainian military, on the Russian military. We can go over different specs on like what's been going on.
Yeah, sure.
All eyes and ears. So what did you guys want to go over?
Based. Okay, so well, we were just taking a look. I'll put the video back up first. So this is what's prompted this discussion is that there are many of these videos that have popped up on Twitter showing what appears to be Russian military equipment heading towards occupied territory in Ukraine to bolster Russian positions. We'll take a look at this one right here. So this was earlier. This was posted a couple hours ago on Twitter, and so those are Russian vehicles right there. So,
yeah, lots of BMP3s right there.
Yeah.
Woo, lots. Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit of nuance here. So the first thing I want to point out is because I know someone pointed this out who does intelligence stuff when they look at Russia, is the stuff that's going to Crimea. I don't think that's for the offensive because they're switching that out because they're adding VDV airborne over there. So those so that infantry, that airborne infantry, that's going specifically to Crimea to just be stationed there. Now the stuff that's worrying is the stuff that's on the border that's going to Donbass. That's the stuff you want to look at. So any of the trains that are going from either from Moscow or St. Petersburg, whatever, if they're going to the Donbass area specifically, I'd be a lot more worried about that because I think that's where they're probably, if something were to happen with some kind of offensive, I think they'll go through there. So just be aware of that though. So they are just moving in and out infantry when it comes to Crimea, but I don't think they would launch something from Crimea though, because it's just a tiny shitty bridge or whatever. So that's based on my speculation and I think reasonably from other people. As far as Donbass goes, the thing I guess what would probably worry a lot of people is the fact that like they can obviously launch an offensive. Now, the big thing that I want to point out though is if they do have an offensive, and I know someone pointed this out on Twitter a little while, I think it was like 8 or 9 hours ago. When you start to see the planes like SU like 30s or SU-25s, if we start seeing a major launch in aircraft and like a lot of activity with airspace, then there's going to be an imminent invasion. I personally think, well, they could do it, I guess, just ground solely though, but I think they would do a combined arms effort, like what we saw with Crimea, where they did a large, naval, Marines, infantry, air, everything. They did the whole shebang. Here's the big thing when it comes to exercises, because you might say like, well, this is just an exercise. Well, one, Russia didn't announce that. They never said it was an exercise or training drill, to my knowledge, at least as of right now that's recording. Two, they've also brought in some very interesting stuff, such as Tachka, ballistic missile systems. I've talked about this, I think on Kevin's chat before and other places. They're very hard-hitting ballistic missiles. These are bigger than Scuds. And we know how much Scuds do damage. I know Kevin's probably posted videos about that. What like what the Houthis use. They use stuff like that. Tachkas are bigger missiles. They have longer range, and on top of that, they obviously do a lot more damage. You can obviously look into that yourself. And the thing is, like if they were just doing like a regular training exercise, I think we would just be seeing the classic, 155 millimeter. Artillery pieces there. Like normally when I see training drills and stuff like that, I don't normally see ballistic missiles. Like that's a little, like that seems like a lot. The other thing too is just how many soldiers are down there. Tens of thousands of soldiers with hundreds of armored vehicles being transported by train down to the south. I'm like, this is a little bit suspicious, And again, normally they would announce ahead of time that there was a training drill, and I haven't heard that unless if anyone here has. And that's a little startling to me. And also, here's another big thing: negotiations have ended for a ceasefire. The ceasefire has been lifted. Basically, it's been 100% lifted at this point. So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Putin was supposed to sign a ceasefire agreement for April 1st, I believe, but he didn't want to do that. So this leads me to believe that, okay, so we're not going to have a renewed ceasefire. You haven't said there's training drills on the border. So are you just wasting a bunch of money just to send a bunch of motorized and mechanized infantry to the Ukrainian border? That doesn't make any sense to me. So the only conclusion I have is that they might try to launch some kind of offensive. Now, this could be big or small. This could be done with the rebels, of course. But I think there is some reason to believe that something major could be going on there within between now and in the near future. And I think it's something that people should look at. Look at the live map or look at reports coming out of from different journalists. So, because I think there's something serious that we haven't seen in quite a number of years.
Yeah, absolutely. We just lost Jay, so Jay had to get going. He did say he couldn't stay too long, but thanks, Jay, for coming on. I think that when it comes to this sort of situation here, as you were saying, you don't think it's likely that they would attempt an invasion directly through from Crimea. I mean, it's a very thin isthmus. It'd be easy for the Ukrainians to, pick them off from that bottleneck. But I think you're right about how they would combine it with air power for sure if they were going to do a full scale invasion. I guess the question that's raised is if Putin takes more land in Ukraine, is he going to be met with the same response from Washington, or do you think that there would actually be more of a commitment to defend Ukrainian sovereignty by the West?
I guess it depends what you mean by that. So, like right now, NATO, well, all NATO countries have been doing intelligence gathering for, the Ukrainian armed forces. I know Lloyd Austin and Tony Blinken and others, and the General Secretary of NATO have all stated that, like, hey, we're going to give you intelligence. We're giving you diplomatic support. So they'll do like a little bit of that. Now, as far as like other types of support go, like is I guess a bit more directly. Um, I don't know. I think maybe in a more safer side of the Ukraine, maybe we could be delivering, I don't know, like javelins or ATGMs or something like that, or spare parts, or doing more, reconnaissance for them.
Mm,
So I could definitely see something like that happen. I mean, like you also have to remember too that like back in 2014, like Ukraine didn't have the same kind of relationship with NATO yet, though. Like they were kind of like they were edging to come onto the individual action plan or whatever, though. But they weren't. They were kind of on it, not really. The relationship between Ukraine and NATO was just a little bit more foggy.
yeah,
In today's world, it's a bit different. We actually have a lot more commitment to them. Like we've donated them Humvees. The Canadian government has donated them the Spartan
yeah,
MRAPs and whatnot. So, excuse me, especially a lot of other NATO nations too. Like Denmark and the UK and France. Like everyone's contributed to helping out Ukraine and support them in some way or another, with as far as like training goes and whatnot. So I definitely think in some ways we would give a better response. I don't know what the response would be exactly. I'm assuming it would be, like I said earlier, maybe more of like resupplying them, intelligence, more sanctions onto Russia. I think stuff like that we might see if they do try to launch an offensive. It depends how big the offensive is. Depends how long it lasts. Depends what it actually is. So
hmm
we really don't know until it actually happens, kind of thing, though. But I would imagine we would have a better reaction, and also a far quicker one too, because again, from my understanding, we still have a few hundred National Guardsmen that are in Kiev or whatever that do training. So we definitely have people there on the ground. We definitely can respond a lot faster. And obviously our response in 2014 was kind of shambled, with Obama. But I think this time around it'll definitely be a little bit better though. I think also too, and this is something I mentioned not too long ago, is that when it comes to Ukraine, with their whole military and everything like that, and I know I have the International Institute of Strategic Studies. I have a whole video on that I have in one of my top tweets that I tweeted not too long ago. that basically, if you compare the Ukrainian military from 2014 to 2019, because that's when that video was released, they made a lot of changes and upgraded their military through tanks, artillery, aircraft, readiness, more troops, more, like across the board, anti-air defense systems. So many things have been modernized and updated within the Ukrainian military. I have a lot more faith in them that they would be able to counteract an offensive, because if you look at 2014, only like a couple thousand soldiers were really ready for combat.
Right.
Now they have over 120,000 soldiers, I think, or maybe
true.
150,000 soldiers. And the thing is, even in 2014 and 2015, the Ukrainians, even then, they still had a hard fight against the rebels in the Donbass airport. They still made them wait the longest time. They really made that a pretty bloody battle. So it's like, if it was bad for the Russians then, and the Russians have stalled too, I think it's going to be a lot worse for Russia this time, though. I think they're in for a rude awakening.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, in terms of relative strength, according to Kiev, the Russians have about 28,000 or so of their so-called separatist troops, and they've got about 33,000 troops in Crimea. But you're right; that's less than half of what Ukraine has in terms of standing forces right now. Now, granted, it's all Ukrainian territory, so it's kind of a bummer that they're occupying a decent chunk of Ukrainian sovereign land. But I think you're right in terms of noting that Ukraine's a lot stronger now than it was, 7 years ago, basically. But I mean, I don't put it past Putin to try to take more ground, though, because he can't get Estonia. He wants Estonia, but he can't have it because of NATO. So he has to compensate for that in, Georgia and Ukraine and everything. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point to note, though. Even when they were pretty weak, they still gave them hell, and that deserves to be recognized.
Yeah. And also, again, the other thing too. Again, I have to stress this, another time. Combat readiness. Most Ukrainian soldiers were not combat ready back in 2014. Today, basically all of them are. So if something breaks out, they can easily send over soldiers. They won't have the same kind of what's it called? Like when they leave the battle or whatever. Or
like attrition? Or...
Yeah. Well, it's shit, I forget the term.
Like AWOL?
No, it's you won't have random soldiers just leaving the battle, like deserting. There we go.
Deserting. Oh yeah, deserting. Yeah,
deserting was a huge problem back in Crimea back in 2014, because I believe like 9 or 10,000 deserted from Crimea. Like, it was a mess. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we'll have that as a big of a problem this time if something were to happen. So again, with all these different factors, with them being more prepared, with them having more modernized equipment to deal with different types of problems from the Russian ground forces, I think standing against them, I think they'll do okay overall. I think they'll definitely give them a lot more hell this time, because Putin's probably thinking, because like they've waited so long, I think Putin's kind of gambling here a little bit, like he's going to lose some guys over there. And does he want to take that risk? I don't know. We'll have to see.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, let's say that Ukraine does manage to hold their ground and, rebuts any sort of a Russian attempt at an incursion. That would be a complete and total embarrassment to Putin, who's supposed to be like this king daddy of the superpower, all that kind of stuff, I mean, if he couldn't pull it off, that'd be totally embarrassing to him. And so, that's why I think you're right about the aircraft and everything, because Russia has way better aircraft than Ukraine. So,
Well, and that's the sad part, because I know some people are, talking to me about this on Twitter, be like, well, like, why haven't we really updated the Air Force so much? And it's like, the Air Force is better today than it was 7 years ago.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
The problem is it's a lot smaller. Like, they only have like 24 MiG-29s, so they have to be very careful with their aircraft because they only have so many of them.
Yeah.
I know they have about a dozen or so, I think, Su-25s, and they have some modernized Su-24s. They have some aircraft, but they have to be very, very careful though, because they only have so many. So, if anything happens, it's got to be really, really rare. And the thing is, Russia has 4,000 aircraft. They have a very large air force. Ukraine has what, like 200 aircraft, maybe total at
That's
best.
true, but Russia can't put even like half of their aircraft into Ukraine. They need to keep others on defense around the country. So Russia, in terms of what they could field down there, like if it went into like an all-out war type situation, maybe 1,000 aircraft you would expect to see. But that would still mean that Ukraine would be outnumbered 5-1. And let's be real, the highly advanced Russian stuff, like the top of their game, is way better than what Ukraine has. I mean, like, obviously it's nothing like what the US has, but the Russian Air Force is pretty serious unless you're the US Air Force. So we have Patagonia. So
well, and the other thing is, like, when it comes to Ukrainian Air Force, they do have some MiG-29s though, but here's the problem. They're like from the 1990s. They're like from the 1980s. These are old Soviet MiG-29s that they have as their multi-role fighter, which does okay. I mean, like, they do the job. It's whatever. It's nothing crazy. Yeah. But it's like, again, they're going to be very careful with it. I don't know if they'll even use them though. They might use them a little bit though, but if there's any kind of ground attack, they'll obviously have a lot of anti-air defense though, so that's going to help them. But they're definitely not going to own the skies. I mean, Russia's going to own the skies. Like let's be real about this though. Even if they only send a few hundred aircraft or how many aircraft, like they're going to own the airspace. Like it's too hard for Ukraine to enforce. The other thing is Ukraine also has a much smaller military budget. They only have a few $1 billion every year. Russia, they spend $80-90 billion a year. Like, it doesn't match up, right? Like, they spend like 10 times the amount of money on the military than Ukraine does though. So just in every metric, they won't be able to own the skies. But here's the thing though. If they can own the ground and if they can hold off, that would be enough to at least push the Russians back. And that's what they have to do.
So you say you could go over specs and everything. What's Ukraine's anti-air systems like? How would you rate their anti-air capability?
So according to different reports, like from the Rand Corporation and whatnot, most reports would vaguely say with all the modernized stuff though, because again they still have some stuff in storage. Most of the modernized stuff can work and it's ready to go. You could look at it different charts and whatnot though, but generally speaking, like a lot of stuff works. So they have the Tor missile, they have the they have the S-300, they have an OSAs, they have the Shokas, whatever. They still have some of those. They have Tunguskas. They also have what's the handheld one? The Igla or whatever, or the Strela. Yeah. They have the Strelas. They have lots of those. They also have those mounted on vehicles as well. I know I'm forgetting probably a couple. Maybe they have some Stingers too, though. But generally speaking, a lot of them have been updated, like with new radar systems. Like a better type of missile. Like if I look on here, sorry, I don't like a lot of these numbers are very. I don't remember all the numbers. Hang on, what's for Ukraine? Yeah, so they do have a better Tor system when it comes to Ukraine. I don't think it's a new radar, but at least they can I don't think it's a new missile. But I know they do have better radar, so they can detect planes a lot faster and then within a wider range. So there's that. I'll be able to post that in a little bit though when I find it though. Sorry, it takes a little minute to find all this stuff though. I'll definitely post the pictures for you. I can give you the screenshots if you want. But as I'm looking for this, and again, also when it comes to readiness too, so troops that operate these anti-air systems, they're a lot more ready than they were in 2014. Most know how to use it, most know how to deploy it. It's going to be a lot smoother for them to be able to be ready for combat if something happens. So that's always a good thing too. So even if the AA systems themselves aren't great, at least they're more prepared for the combat, and that's always very important. Like we see in a lot of conflicts around the world, you don't necessarily have to have the biggest stick to win the fight, right? There's definitely like a lot of conflicts right now, or even in the past, some different armed groups and whatnot. They've used older equipment, to win. Like for the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict.
Yeah.
The Azeris, some of their infantry were using, 1960s AK-47s just to, wipe out infantry and whatnot. So it's not always necessarily having the biggest stick. It's really about how do you use it if you're prepared for it and stuff like that. So I think that's another thing I want to, always emphasize about that. I guess in terms of other ways too. So Ukraine, they have, I don't know if Kevin knows this though, but Ukraine was one of the largest manufacturers of the T-80 and the T-64 main battle tanks. They had many factories throughout Ukraine during the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union broke up, Ukraine inherited thousands of T-64s and T-80 tanks. Now, the good news is they've been able to update those T-64 BMs into T-64 B1Ms or whatever. So they've modernized all those with new reactive armor, new missiles, a new 125 millimeter gun. Some of them even with like optics too, or like with laser sights, like what you see with like on Israeli tanks, whatever. So, and you also see some other stuff too when it comes to like whether it be like radios or like I don't know, like when it comes to like satellite communication and whatnot, like some of that's been integrated with NATO a little bit better, or like when it comes to armor protection for era armor. So there's definitely been some NATO integration to some of their tanks. So it's not all just like old Soviet stuff though. Like they've actually revamped them to make them a lot better.
Okay.
So that's always a good thing. When it comes to their armored cars, they've been trying, or APCs, whatever, they've been, they have the BTR-4. I don't know if you know about that. That's their indigenous BTR to get rid of all the old Soviet stuff.
Yeah.
And again, they've been just trying to do their best to, move away from that old Soviet equipment. Because if you look at their stuff, they have stuff from like the 1960s or like the 1950s. I'm like, you guys got to upgrade this. Of course they're upgrading. Of course, I'm not.
Yeah, it's like North Korea.
Yeah. Well, like North Korea has like, I think they still have the PBSH like 41 41 or whatever. Yeah, they have like crazy old stuff.
Well, I mean, North Korea has a mix. Like North Korea has a mix. They have MiG-29s, and then they have like MiG-17s and MiG-15s.
Yeah. Well, I've always said the joke when it comes to North Korea. I would be surprised if those MiG-15s can even get off the ground. That, to me, that surprises me. But anyways,
they can though, because they put propaganda videos out of them at air shows and stuff, and doing acrobatics for the great leaders and everything. Like you watch the videos and they'll fly, and they all have Kim's portrait on the dashboard. With avionics and stuff. It's like 1950s. And they're getting up there. They're practicing. They're going to get up there and they're going to give those F-35s hell, man. So
absolutely. Well, and also like the funny thing when it comes to North Korea too, is like I think they have what, like 800 or like 1,000 aircraft in total, and people will be like, that's a little scary. But like, I would be surprised if even 20% of those planes can fly.
Over half of those planes, by the way, are propellered aircraft. A lot of those are from World War II.
Oh, they basically like kamikaze?
No. They're designed. They're these planes. I forget the specific ones. They're Antonovs. They're actually designed in such a way that they can even fly backwards. They're able to like almost hover in the wind, and they're able to like, they're not stealthy, but they're designed for paradropping, large amounts of special forces over the border. That's what they've got these things for. They're not like gonna, use their cannons to shoot down stealth jet fighters, but about half their aircraft are like that. So yeah, if you actually look at the numbers, they have one of the largest air forces in the world. But in terms of the quality of their stuff, we're talking about maybe 30 aircraft that would be formidable against countries like Russia and China. They wouldn't stand a chance against the U.S. or really South Korea if South Korea had the will to fight them. So,
Okay, so I found here's some statistics. So here's some of I'm going to give you this screenshot so you can post for everybody. If I get a little bit more nitty gritty, we could talk about this. So in it's hard for me to always memorize these numbers because it's just a bit insane. So I always have to have these notes with me. So I shared you a screenshot of some of the stuff that they've updated. It's pretty promising. And again, obviously having your tech updated to 21st century standards is obviously going to help you in any combat situation. So it's actually pretty good. Like a lot of things have changed in 7 years for the Ukrainian military, and I've been keeping a pretty good eye on it. I have some more if you want to look over though, but that's just one of them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm just going to upload this right now. Okay, here we go. So this is combat readiness crisis solutions. We got repair of air defense systems, 80% of S-300 and 40% of Buk M1 underwent necessary repair process. In general, Ukraine has 25 divisions of S-300, PS/PT, 10 divisions of Buk M1, and 1 division of S-300 V1. Repair of main battle tanks, you can talk in T-64, T-72, AB and B1, and T-80 BV. From personnel carriers, BTR-70, BTR-80, and IFVs, second BMP-1 and 2, by 6 major Ukrainian armor vehicle factories. Provision of necessary amount of basic functioning main battle tanks and armor vehicles to land forces, air assault forces, marine forces. In 2018, approximately 50 planes, MiG-29, the Sukhoi 27, 24, Sukhoi 25, L-39, Antonov 26, Ilyushin 76, and helicopters. You got Mi-8s, 14s, and 24s were repaired. Of them, 7 MiG-29s, 4 of MU-1 model, 3 Sukhoi 25 M1K, 15 helicopters. The Sukhoi 27s are modernized to 1M model. The general level of the functioning equipment has risen to 85% in 5 years. Oh, yeah. So equipment budget in 2013 of $187 million, in 2018, $575 million. Well, that's a pretty big increase in expenditure. I mean, that's like, what? That's like a 3-fold increase.
And I sent you another picture from 2014 so we can do the comparison. So I really want to see, have your audience be educated and see the numbers on this. Because I think this is going to give Putin a little bit of an awakening here. Like, hey man, like you're not the toughest guy on the block,
No, I appreciate it. And like, I'll read through this again just because like a lot of the listeners, might not actually be watching the screen right now. So this is 2014 for comparison. Only 6,000 troops of 121,000 troops of Ukrainian armed forces were ready to perform orders on short notice at the beginning of March of 2014. So we're talking about, what's that, like 5% of their army, basically. That's
basically awful.
That's dismal. That's absolutely dismal. And in this context of 5% readiness, the fact that they were able to not lose anywhere near as much ground as they could have lost, that's pretty impressive. And you're right, like contrasting where they're at now to where they're at then, it's possible that if Putin were to restart things, maybe the Ukrainians recapture land in the Donbass, perhaps. Level of functioning equipment, 43 to 45%. So in contrast, the one that we were looking at from 2018, so 4 years later, was 85%, so almost double. In each brigade of land forces at best, only 1 in 4 battalions was combat ready. 1 in 4. 1 in 4. Okay, examples of combat readiness crisis. Of 46 MiG-29s, MiG-29UB at 204th Tactical Aviation Brigade at Belbek, Crimea, only 4 fighters were capable to fly. God damn.
Yeah, I know. So
4 of 46, dude. Dude, even the North Koreans at that point probably had more that were ready to go up in the air. 72nd Mechanized Brigade, Bila Zerkova, was unable to come to Kiev due to shortage of basic equipment like batteries. As the result of Crimean occupation, Ukraine lost 8 divisions of air defense systems, 5 divisions of S-300 PS, and 3 divisions of Buk M1. 7 combat ships, and land-based anti-ship missile complexes. God damn, what an embarrassment! But I think you contrast that to where they're at now. No, yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. That if Putin thinks that it's going to be like how it went down in 2014, like they might actually lose ground. You're talking about an army that 7 years ago had no morale, was at 6% readiness,
6% Shank.
Where it's 6% Shank, 6% Shank. That's right, 6%. Like, where is he? Like that guy right there. Like that guy right there. So they used to be like him, and now they're like them.
Yeah. I got one more screenshot for you, so just give you a good idea. Because again, I really want to get the audience across that. I'm optimistic for Ukraine, and this is why. When you actually look at the stats, you look at the stuff behind the scenes, you can really see there's a huge difference. And I want your audience to know, because Ukraine is, unironically, become pretty based. So.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, Ukraine's based. Let's just bring this one up here. So this is incremental qualitative development. New systems of tactical level communications equipment. Motorola, Harris Falcon, Aselsan radio stations. Till 2020, all brigades will have Aselsan and Harris Falcon radio stations. Electronic warfare complexes. Enclave, Noda, Bukovo, R330 UM, Mandat. Approximately 50 radars of different types transferred to air forces, among them 79 K6, 36 D6, and MP-18. 2017 to 18, 100 main battle tanks, T-64BV, were modernized to level T-64BV, mod 2017. Modernized tanks of mod 2017 are comparable with Russian T-72B3 main battle tank. New system of tactical medical assistance. So these were all credit to the Institute of World Policy.
I'm sorry. So one thing I wanted to highlight here real quick from that screenshot is, if you noticed, those T-64 BVs are now on par with the T-72 B3s.
72, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Kevin might know this, and maybe some of you guys might know this too. The T-72 B3 is their main battle tank that they have thousands of, right?
Oh yeah.
So
literally
if they're gonna do like an armored push, they're gonna be using T-72 B3s most likely. Maybe they use a different variation, but it's likely gonna be the T-72 B3. So this gives me confidence, and hopefully gives other people confidence too, that Ukraine's made battle tanks are gonna be on par with Russian ones. So
yeah, they'll look a bit older. They'll look a bit older, but in terms of the actual quality comparison, they're like, they have parity essentially.
Yeah. So again, so it's gonna come down to this: like, they're gonna have to think to themselves, like, well, if they're gonna do some kind of armored or mechanized push, they have another thing to look at, because like this is gonna be a little bit more devastating to the Russians this time. They're gonna have a bit more, strength, and it's like, hey, we can actually hold out if you're gonna do something. So. I think one reason why Putin has held out from doing anything in Crimea, especially very recently, is because he's gambling. He doesn't know. Because if Putin was really that confident, I think he would have done this a while ago, though. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know if he can win. So that's the big thing about this, is that like he's playing his cards, and I think if he tries to make the wrong step or the wrong move, I think Ukraine might actually put these guys in the gutter to go, fringe and cringe. Like these guys are just, it's just, I don't know, like, cause again, like there's so many people that think like, oh man, like the Russian military, it's just like this crazy spooky thing you can't combat against. I'm like,
hey man, they got spooky nukies, right? Which they can never use because they get destroyed if they use them. So
yeah. Well, especially seeing some of the recent stuff with like ballistic missiles not working. What was that ballistic missile that wasn't working?
Oh, so that okay. So I actually did a premiere on this show talking about it, because that was of course the Iskander, their latest Iskanders that they got rolling out, which are formidable. Like they're dead accurate. We're talking single-digit meter CEPs. We're talking potential 500 kiloton warhead capability. And yet, what was the deal with them? Well, the Ukrainian prime minister described them as...
Oh, you mean Armenian. You mean Armenian.
Yeah, Armenian. Did I say Ukrainian?
Yeah. You said Ukrainian.
Okay, I meant Armenian. The Armenian prime minister described them as quote unquote unworkable. These things were pitched by the Russians to all these countries as like, you want to buy this shit and everything, man. You want to buy it. It's going to be good. It's going to be accurate. It's going to be swaggy. And Armenia acquired them. Armenia used them in combat. And oh, look at that. Once you actually have to use modern Russian stuff in war, it doesn't look so shiny anymore. They had a 90% failure rate. So Putin was so triggered by this, and so mad and enraged that he put out. He had the Russians put out a video proving that their Iskanders do work, and he showed a video of a Russian Iskander blowing up a hospital in rebel-controlled territory in Syria. So, Russians are like the Kremlin's a complete group of thugs, right? And of course their quality sucks. Their quality totally sucks, and they're like, okay, buy our stuff. I mean, it's kind of funny. Their older stuff probably works better than their newer stuff in a way. It's probably more reliable.
And I also just have to say one thing on this though. What I forgot the statistics though. Wasn't it only like 1 in 4 of them actually exploded though, or something crazy like that though? If they can't even detonate, what's the use? What's the use of the ballistic missile?
Well, they launched. They had a 90% failure to detonate. Was if I recall correctly, it was like
That's insane.
No, it's insane. It's insane. That's why. Like when you say unworkable, he wasn't lying. 90% failure rate is worse than made in China at that point. So 90%. That's basically 6% jank. Like if 6% jank were 10% jank, that's the Russian strategic rocket forces, like
God, that's
now granted, this stuff's not strategic, this stuff is tactical, but they use these things to spook Poland and Germany with Kaliningrad. They stationed them there and they're like, hey man, we could put a 500 kiloton warhead on your cities within 500 kilometers, man, if you screw around with us. And it's like, except, is it even really going to detonate? Is it even really going to launch? Is it even really going to stay on its flight path? Who knows? Like, that's why I feel that Russia in many ways is a paper tiger. Like, I mean, sure, they can roll out their swaggy Armada tanks, and they can have their, what is it, the pack aircraft, all this kind of stuff, everything. But like at the end of the day, a lot of it just seems to be bunk and junk. When it's
the T-14, that thing broke down in a parade.
It literally broke down in the parade. There's a video on Russia Today of that happening, and you're like, why would they even upload that? Because it happened live. So,
God,
I know.
There's people that simp for Russia too, dude. They're not even cool.
No, they think they're based in Shad and Trad. That's what they'd say. That Putin's the savior of the West. We got a lot of problems, and he's going to come here and set things straight, and deal with all the gays and that kind of stuff. That's what they say about it.
And here's the thing, though. Like, if they were like cool bad guys, it would like kind of make a little bit more sense, though. But they're not even that, though. They're not even cool. Like, guys, like, they don't get work.
The Soviet Union, unironically, had a more formidable military, and they were woefully inefficient and stagnant and everything and all that kind of stuff. But like, just on the margin, they didn't have a 90% failure to detonate on their latest stuff. They didn't have tanks break down, on live television, all that kind of stuff. They were like the Bond villains, whereas Putin's more like a cartoon villain, basically.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You go.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that I do think that when we talk about Russia and the paper tiger, I think that's accurate, and I want that to be displayed in a full capacity in Ukraine, and hopefully that happens, because I'm tired of these the people in the European government, and specifically my home country. There are those people who simp for Russia. They literally tried to destroy our nation, and they still simp for them. And I just want Ukraine to prove to to the country that this is not the nation that's going to save anything. They can't save themselves. They're not going to save us.
No, absolutely. I want to give Pess a chance to speak if Pess has your audio and everything working. Thanks for coming on the show. How's it going?
It's going good, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I'm glad that you can make it and that your stuff wound up actually connecting properly. There's just a little bit of a wind or something from your end, but other than that, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Well, what I was gonna say is, I think the main issue I have here is just the European powers have been completely naive to the point where they're negotiating with Russia on the Normandy format without Ukraine at this point, because Ukraine is very clear. They want control over their territories back, but the Europeans negotiate. They want to concede. They want to maintain their economic ties, and this is why we've come to this point where Russia is threatening Ukraine with a massive military buildup on its borders because of European and overall Western weakness and naivety. So I think best case scenario, this is just Putin flexing his muscles to try to get something at the negotiating table. Worst case scenario, he got tired because he saw that Ukraine is powerful enough to retake the Donbass easily within a few days. So, eventually coming to the conclusion that he has to intervene to maintain his stronghold over what he already has in the region. So, yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's pretty clear after, some of the figures that Anthony laid out earlier, as well as the trajectory of the Ukrainian army in terms of their, obviously morale boost, quality boost, funding boost, etc. Unless Putin throws a lot into it, they might actually gain ground in the Donbass if Putin starts something, which would be so epically based and hilarious. And you would have all the Putin simps on 4chan and Twitter and Facebook losing their minds that their Chad savior of the West got his ass kicked by a bunch of degenerate Ukrainians.
And actually,
except he can't throw everything he's got at them because he's too busy sending his army to die in Syria.
And he has to also guard the borders and everything too. That's why he can't really contribute that much. And he can't use the one thing that they have, the one sort of trump card that they have is the nukes, but they can never use the nukes. So it's what good is that for?
It's also
all it is. Yeah.
It's also funny because because I know a lot of people who do intelligence stuff on Twitter have said this, all these pictures that, well, not all the pictures though, but some of these pictures and videos that we're seeing of Ukrainian soldiers or who's ever filming these trains of all this equipment moving. Some of it is because of drunk soldiers or naive soldiers that are not supposed to be taking pictures of it. So it just shows the incompetency of the Russian military if you have your own soldiers taking pictures of what's going on, which is actually kind of funny because if you go on VK, you can see Russian soldiers taking pictures of things they're not supposed to. And boom, you got the intelligence. You didn't even have to work for it.
Well, that open source intel, that accidental open source intel, that effortless open source intel. There's a great Vice piece from a long time ago. I think it was back in 2015 or whatever, shortly after Putin invaded Crimea. And they were talking about how, Putin's line was, it's just, they're just people, they're just, they're ethnic Russians, but they're in Crimea and they're just, they're not with us. They want to be Russian and everything. And we're not sending any troops over there or whatever. And it's you look at a lot of these people that are there, that are taking these pictures there and everything. You track their data back. You go back and you're like, oh, what was this guy doing in Novosibirsk 2 weeks beforehand? Oh, this guy's associated with the Russian army. Oh, that's kind of interesting. And it would just be story after story of these guys that showed up in Crimea to, basically be Putin's black shirts over there and intimidate everybody into submission. And they're not Ukrainian volunteers for Russia; they're Russian forces. just without a uniform.
No, they were just no. It was ethnic Germans, not the German army in Sudetenland.
Crocodile super soldiers.
Also, I love those videos on VK that said like, I am a Russian soldier in Crimea. Like some of them even just said it on camera with their phones. And it's like, dude, your own soldiers are saying this.
Yeah, no, they're really stupid when it comes down to that. Like some of the people in the Kremlin obviously are very smart people, but their forces, they're not as cohesive as the alt-right would make them out to be. Like, look, here's the reality about Russia. Russia is wrought with nihilism. Russia is wrought with alcoholism. Russia is wrought with poverty. And Russia is wrought with drug addiction. And there are a lot of people in Russia that, you know, even in the military, that they're like, well, top secret, what does that mean? I'm going to post these pics up on VK because it's swaggy. It's like, look at me. Like, imagine if U.S. Soldiers did that kind of thing. Like, you know, like special ops, take down bin Laden, just like take a selfie where you're at it, upload it to the gram. Like, imagine if America did that kind of thing. It'd be totally embarrassing. Yet hardly anybody talks about when Russia does it because people don't necessarily pay that much attention to Russia, you know? So.
Yeah. Also, it's kind of funny because I watched a training video from the Russian, I think it was from the Russian VDV Airborne. And there was this video, it's like a BMP, but it's called the BMD-4. There's these guys, I think it was like a driver and there's like a gunner or whatever, but it wasn't fully packed. It was just like two people in the vehicle. The guy literally opens up the hatchet and he's got like a bottle with them. He's drinking and they drive over a fence into like someone's yard. And I think they hit the wall. And it's like during training exercises, there's people who are drunk. Like,
oh yeah,
this is the thing.
In Russia, alcohol consume you, right?
It's so embarrassing. Like imagine if you were allowed to drink alcohol on active duty in the United States military. We wouldn't put up with that.
No. In Soviet Russia, alcohol consume you. So
you claim to be trad pilled, yet you have the highest abortion rates in the world.
Yeah, and ironically, they also have some of the lowest church attendance rates too, which is kind of funny because they're supposed to be like this TradCon Orthodox Christian utopia or whatever. It's like the country's poor, drug addicted, alcoholistic, nihilist branded, basically like Nazboli, atheists essentially. And yet the alt-right's like, oh no, Putin's Chad and trad. That's what they say about him. So
it's more like cringe and fringe to me. And again, it's just it's just way too funny to see. And like the thing is, again, like it just shows because if there's this guy I follow on Twitter, his name is Rob, and he does a lot of looking into like the Russian military and whatnot. If you look at some of the stuff, well, not like obviously like like some of these things are just accidents, of course, though, but there's like a lot of incidents, recently and in the past where you can find these videos of like, what the hell are these people doing? Like they're driving like tanks into the wrong areas, into parking lots and whatnot. I'm like, guys, you guys put yourself into danger first, like let alone combat. Like you guys are unironically going to be why you're going to mess up, like they should be more worried about themselves than the Ukrainians, to be totally honest.
I'm just imagining like the FSB or whatever, they send sleeper agents into America and they like upload their adventure to like YouTube or Instagram. They're like, yeah, so we're with the FSB, we're infiltrating American society. We're gonna pretend to be Americans for the next 5 years and try to subvert people and all this. And it's like, vlog with me. It's like on the town in New York. Like, let's go to a restaurant and like Putin pill random people and shit. It's like,
didn't that happen with like Navalny, where like the guy on the phone admitted that he was working with the FSB?
I forget the details around that, but I remember there was something that compromised Putin's storyline around that. I mean, because that's the thing. Putin's actually very smart. Like he's one of the smartest leaders there are. He's a scumbag, but he's a pretty smart guy. The people around him are like cartoon henchmen. They're like dumb as a rock. And it's like, you know, I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling idiots, you know? So,
Because I
I
believe.
just think
Oh, sorry, you go.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I'm just gonna how is it that this nation has some of the highest test scores in the world, some of the best chess masters in the world, yet they're also a bunch of drunken idiots?
no. Russia is like let's just be clear about something. Russia's the most educated society in the world. Like, it's not even close. The 54% of Russians have bachelor degrees or higher. That's twice what it is in Canada and the US, for example. So the problem is the quality of their schools is incredibly weak. And going to school there, getting a university degree doesn't mean you get a good job. It means, okay, now you can work fast food because everybody has a degree. That's like Russia is a textbook example of why getting as many people to go to college as possible is a stupid idea, and why it doesn't create like a base utopian society. So just creates more poverty, you know, and now they have like universal education and whatnot and everything over there. Just a part of their culture. I mean, you want to be a mechanic over there, you have to have a 4-year degree. You know, it's like it's not just like it's not even like a job requirement. It's that people are going to think you're a loser if you don't have a degree over there. Like, it's way worse than the U.S. or Canada. Like in the U.S. or Canada, if you don't go to school, people might ask you like, "Oh, well, like are you not that bright or what's the deal or whatever." But in Russia, it's like a great stain on a family's image if, you know, their kid, even if the kid just wants to do like nothing that requires a degree formally, you don't have a degree, that's going to be a problem. That's why 54% of the country has degrees. I mean, they have a big value on formal education, but again, the quality of the schools is shitty, and there's such an excess of supply that it doesn't get you anything. It's like the new high school diploma.
Well, also like another problem that they run into, and again, I'm not. I want to preface this real quick before I say this. I'm not saying this is everything, but this is one reason, and it's a smaller reason, but it's still legitimate. So one reason why they invaded Crimea too is for population purposes. What is happening to the demographics in Russia right now? They're declining.
Yeah.
They're going to be losing what, like 10, 20% of their population or even more by 2050. And,
Yeah,
you might, and you might say like, well, you know, yeah, of course, like the reason why they took Crimea is obviously more for economic reasons. So they get like that warm seaport or whatever, obviously though. But if you think about it on another sense, they get what, 3 million of a population boost in a fairly easy military, land grab.
Yeah.
So, they do these little things. Like I know they did. I don't know if they did this with like South Ossetia too or whatever though. But whenever they do these little military interventions, they get a little bit more of a population boost. And it always seems to be that like they try to do that at least a little bit. And I think this is at least one reason why they do it, is because they know like, hey, there's a few million ethnic Russians here. We can take a piece of this land, and they add to our population a little bit. That I believe that definitely at least plays a little bit of a role into their calculation when they do these military interventions. Not so much in Syria, of course, though, but like if you look in like Central Asia or the South Caucasus or like in Eastern Europe, whatever, they're definitely thinking about the populations a little bit as far as like ethnic Russians go. Because again, they're losing millions of Russians because, well, over the course of decades in the future, but they're losing them because the birth rate is low. And one of the reasons why the birth rate is low is because poor infrastructure, not enough jobs around. People just don't like the government. People go abroad. Like, why would you start a family in Russia? Like if you're like a Russian couple, you would go to the United States though. And actually, like the funny thing is like a quick side story on that. I used to work at the store, and there used to be like this Russian couple that came in.
Yeah.
And I think they moved to the United States a couple years ago. And they told me that like in the United States, they're far more better when it comes to family planning and whatnot than they do in Russia. Like unironically speaking, like we're way more pro-family in a lot of ways than Russia is. So it's like I always find it so strange when people think that Russia's like this family tradcon paradise. It's like it's not like that. Talk to Russian couples that live abroad; they will not say that. So it's just like a little tidbit I wanted to throw in there. And it just shows how like Russia's just like an awful place to live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why they have the brain drain. I mean, they have demographic issues. They have, I mean, they basically have a situation where the more time goes by, the less formidable they're going to be when it comes to their ability to project power. They'll still have the nukes as a deterrent from invasion, but they need to gain ground while they have the capability to do so. And I think that's why Putin's been so aggressive in the last decade, because he knows that his time is running out, you know? So might as well gain as much ground as possible before you can anymore. Is kind of his logic,
Well,
right?
and I know I don't know if this was Bill Crystal that said this. I forgot who said this though, but I know someone said this about a year or two ago.
Hmm.
And again, quote me from whoever, because I forgot whose name this is though. So I apologize. But I remember watching on a I think it was on CNN panel thing or whatever, and this one guy says, "Well, a failing empire is just as dangerous as a rising one." And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, like, well, that sounds kind of weird. But if you actually think about it, when it comes to Russia, because they're a failing empire, look at what they're doing.
Yes.
Georgia, Syria, Ukraine.
That's exactly it. That's why I consider them, just for the record here, people ask this all the time. The reason why Russia is a bigger threat than China isn't that China's not the big long-term threat. It's that Russia's got a limited amount of time left and they're making reckless moves because they feel that they're running out of time. They're way more dangerous than China. China feels that they can sit around and build up their economy and all this kind of stuff and everything. We can deal with them, and we should deal with them, and we should deal with both of them. But in the here and now, right now, Putin's in Ukraine, Putin's in Georgia, Putin's in Syria. China is still, for the most part, mostly economically expansionist. Russia is incredibly belligerent. I mean, hell, the Russian army rammed an American convoy in Syria and then posted the video of them doing it to YouTube. So they're just blatant about it. Like, yeah, we'll ram and injure U.S. soldiers. There were U.S. soldiers that were rammed by Russian vehicles, military vehicles, and they were injured as a result of it. And you're like,
rammed them back.
yeah, and you're like, this is why it's a very dangerous situation to be in. I mean, it's those sorts of incidents that always lead up to the escalation in all the movies, you know, like Day After, all that kind of stuff. It's always small little skirmishes in the Mediterranean that eventually lead to a full exchange of ICBMs. And I'm not saying, oh, it's World War III. I'm not brainlet June. I'm just saying there's a way higher chance that World War III would happen with Russia right now than with China, because China feels that the more they wait, the stronger they get. Russia feels the more they wait, the weaker they get. So might as well make moves right now while you have the opportunity. Well, they're way more dangerous, man. They're not. I would disagree with that statement that you had quoted, because I don't think they're as dangerous as a rival empire. I think they're more dangerous right now. So.
Yeah. He was referencing Russia versus China in that regard. Again, I forgot who it was. If someone in the chat knows, I apologize for.
It must have been Bill Crystal, because
I think it was for the interviewer. I'm sorry, for the interviewee, but I can't remember. But either way, like when it comes to Russia, I mean, just look at the Soviet Union. What happened towards the end, right? They were supporting conflicts in Angola. They were in Afghanistan. They were supporting Syria. They were in all these conflicts from like the late 70s and into the 80s. And look what happened. The country fell apart, and then they got into more conflicts. And it's like when a falling empire, like unironically so, is actually like going down the drain. Even if and I'm not saying like Russia's kind of like this internal civil war or anything like that though. But like when it comes to geopolitical power, when they're losing on that ground, more conflicts start to appear. I mean, how think of like the Ottoman Empire. Or someone mentioned Hitler in the chat. Yeah, like think of all these huge regimes that happened, right? And what happened towards the end? They got into a lot of conflicts. Again, I'm not saying there's gonna be like this crazy big war or anything like that, though. But I'm just saying, as far as instability goes geopolitically, when they start to fail, they really get a lot more aggressive, and that's something that we have to keep out for, or watch out.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And so, we are over the hour mark, so I do want to wrap this up pretty soon, but I want to give Pest an opportunity to give his thoughts. If you got any thoughts right now, Pest.
Sure. What I was gonna say was, I think in the long run, Russia is doomed. I think that it probably won't exist in 100 years. It'll just become a no, a Chinese colony simply because everyone died of old age and alcoholism. So I think the problem here is that Putin is at an impasse when it comes to negotiations in the Normandy format because his ideal scenario for ending the war is Donbass gains autonomy. The Donetsk People's Republic, they essentially become what is it? An autonomous region of Ukraine that is able to veto Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO. So, like, if Ukraine wants to join NATO, he wants the Donbass to have veto power over that to prevent them from joining, and that's why he's pushing hard to gain autonomy for the Donbass. Ukraine is very clear; they want sovereignty, they want control of their borders, and then they'll consider it. But because of that, Putin is right now bypassing Ukraine and speaking directly to Macron and Merkel. And when that occurs, I think it really shows how weak the West is in engaging this threat, especially the French and the Germans. But other than that, I think that in a case of an all-out war, I think we agreed that it'll be very, very costly. It's not what Dugin thinks, where he can just roll all the way to Poland. I think the Russian army is in a very bad state, as was said earlier in the stream. So other than that, thank you for letting me on, and have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Pest. We'll go to Grayson next for closing remarks.
So basically, we essentially keep hearing from the pro-Russia people that Russia is going to come barging into Europe and going to save us from whatever the hell that they oppose, I guess liberalism.
Yeah.
And the only reason why Russia hasn't been completely irrelevant at this point is because the West keeps being weak, trying to concede to them, because it would take a very limited show of force to defeat Russia, but the West just won't do it. I mean, we keep making this connection to appeasement. I think this is worse than appeasement, because at least for appeasement, you can make the argument that they weren't prepared for war. They were still building up.
Yeah.
We're prepared for war, except we just won't do it.
We don't have the will. Like back then, they didn't have the will, and you could say, well, maybe they didn't have the material to do it. We have the material, but we don't have the willpower. Is kind of what you're saying, which is in a way worse, right? So I would agree with that assessment. Yeah.
Anyway, with that, I would just say, hopefully we can see Ukrainian troops defeat Russian troops, and hopefully this will dispel this useless narrative that Russia's going to save us. And hopefully, come 2022, we can kick out that asshole in Hungary who keeps trying to simp for Russia.
Yeah. Absolutely. To hell with Orban. 100%.
I think we need a real conservative in Hungary. Like, not this.
Yeah. So there we go. So that's Grayson. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll go to Anthony Roberto. Thanks for offering your analysis and everything, your insight here. I know you take the energy to keep up with a lot of the, the specific military capacities and everything. And I think the audience especially will appreciate the detail that you offered here tonight with that. If you got any closing remarks, feel free.
Yeah, I have a few. I'm sorry earlier that I didn't have all my stuff ready though, because I was kind of given on short notice. If I was told earlier, I would have had more things ready, so I kind of gave those to you at the last minute. And I always like to make sure that I'm not like 100% precise, but making sure I'm giving you like guys like actual facts and whatnot, not just saying like vaguely like this is better or like today's better than yesterday, of course. So like I always like to give people like an actual visual representation. Like, okay, like, you know, like back then 40% of like the military was like ready, and today it's like 85% or whatever, though. You know, like, because you could say stuff like, oh, you know, like in 2014 the Ukrainian military was worse than today or whatever, but that doesn't mean much to people unless if you actually have actual statistics, though. So I did try to provide you with that from the International Institute of Strategic Studies. There's also other reports and whatnot, and if you DM me and whatnot, you can get some more. I was just giving that on short notice, so I tried my best to give you some information, of course, so that we actually are working on you know, like getting that stuff together. And again, if I do come back on, I'll be a bit more prepared. We can actually go over some other stuff. So just for that. And again, I always want to leave it always on a good note as well. When it comes to Ukraine, they are in a lot better position today. We saw the stats earlier. So if something does happen, it's going to be better, you know, this time around. I mean, at least I think it will, and so do other people. So I think Putin definitely has something to watch out for. He's got to be very careful. You know, it's like I said before, he's gambling on this. He doesn't know. He doesn't know if he's going to be successful. If it does happen, he doesn't know if he's going to be successful. That's at least good enough to put Putin into some kind of danger. Because if he thinks he can just steamroll, then that's bad. If he actually has to roll the dice to see if he's successful, that's a good thing. We want to make sure that he's scared. That's you know, that's the whole point. But again, you know, as always, thanks for having me on, Kevin. If you want to do more of this stuff, we can. We get more into like the nitty gritty of other stuff if you want to. Obviously, this was constrained to an hour. Now it's just kind of thrown on here, kind of at the last minute. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's good. We'll you know, you, me, whoever else will closely monitor the situation to see what happens. And like as always, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. I think a lot of people appreciate, you know, just the detail that you bring and everything. And you know, I've had people say, "Oh yeah, you know, we're like Anthony, man, he really knows his stuff and everything." It's always cool to have you here. And you know, I did mention earlier, like about 6 hours ago, that I was going to talk about this tonight in the group chat. But you know, not everybody is able to read every specific thing in the group chat. In future, I'll send you a DM saying, you know, well, you know, I'd be interested in having you on this panel, talk about this subject. So at least I give you some time to prepare. But I mean, for no preparation, I think that you made your point, you know, in terms of the actual stats around a lot of the key, you know, units and whatnot and military capacity of Ukraine there compared to 2014. So with that, thanks to all the panelists for coming on. Thank you to the audience for being here this evening. And, you know, I would say, well, obviously keep you up to date with what winds up happening in this region. But, you know, we obviously hope for Ukraine to eventually regain its control over its sovereign territory. And with that, thank you for watching. So I'll be here tomorrow, of course, as always. And if you want to support what I do, you can check out my Patreon. You can check out my PayPal as well as my Ko-Fi. We're doing a campaign over in Ko-Fi right now to raise the funds to compensate me for the $320 I had to spend to get a new microphone because my old one died. We're 7% the way there already. So thank you to Burton Sherman for that. And if you'd like to help out, definitely check out Ko-Fi. With that, I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody, and stay based.